Fire Emblem Engage has me extremely conflicted. I was legitimately pretty excited for this game. As a fan of Japanese-made games, I've really enjoyed the Fire Emblem games that I've played in the past, particularly Three Houses. I played so much of that game, and I consider it as one of my favorite games of all time. I knew in advance that this game was going to be different. I knew that it got rid of the school system, and that the gameplay loop was far more similar to the classic Fire Emblem games. I also knew that apparently this game was anime as fuck! I knew things would be different, but I didn't realize they would be worse in a lot of aspects. Don't get me wrong, I've enjoyed my time with Fire Emblem Engage, and I'll probably end up finishing it. But after my 6 or so hours of gameplay, there's some criticisms that I just cannot ignore. Let's talk about it. First of all, let's discuss what I've enjoyed with this game, that being the gameplay. The gameplay of this game slaps so far. If you've played any of the other Fire Emblem games, you know what you're getting into here. You pick your units, move them across a grid, and then destroy your enemies until there are none left standing! To accomplish this task, you're given a variety of different classes for units. There are swordsmen, cavalry, flying knights, armored knights, archers, mages, thieves, and the list just goes on. Every unit is different statistically and experiences different stat growths upon leveling up. This can affect their ability to move across the battlefield more quickly, as well as their attack power and ability to dodge, among other things. The variety of units on offer makes for a ton of different strategies that you can employ in order to win battles. This game also brings back the weapon triangle system from the classic Fire Emblem games. Swords beat axes, axes beat lances, and lances beat swords. On top of this is the new break system. In previous Fire Emblem games, having the advantage of weapon would provide a stat boost that could decide fights. In Engage, having the weapon advantage will break your enemy's weapon, rendering them unable to counterattack. This is a pretty awesome and satisfying system that adds a lot of depth onto the already pretty deep combat of Fire Emblem. There's even more intentionality in which units you bring onto the field and where you place them, like a giant game of chess. On top of this is the new Engage system. Through the power of fan service, characters from previous Fire Emblem games can be summoned to give your units new abilities, such as enhanced mobility and super moves that can truly turn the tide of battle. These can be absolutely busted, like Celica's Emblem Ring, which enables the user to not only teleport across the map, but also unleash a magical nuke that does a ton of damage to one unit. I've found these Emblem Rings to be extremely fun to play around with, even if they do break the game a little bit sometimes. It's the central gameplay loop that has kept me going throughout Fire Emblem Engage. Something about this style of gameplay just tickles my brain, is inherently satisfying. It feels good to outsmart the enemy and find a strategy that wins the day while keeping everyone in my party alive. I'm only playing on casual mode, so there's no permadeath, but I still do my best to keep everyone alive regardless. So the core gameplay absolutely slaps. That's great, right? Well, gameplay isn't everything to me. I'm the type of gamer who appreciates a good story too. Some of my favorite games are my favorites because they tell a good story. If that's the case, how's the story in Engage? Well, it's kinda not good. While the story isn't outright terrible, what it is painfully generic. I mean it. When I heard that this game was anime, I wasn't expecting it to be the bland bargain bin type of anime that clogs up the release schedule every year. If this story suddenly changes and decides to become more unique and interesting later on, then I'll be truly shocked, because 6 hours in, there is nothing here! Spoilers for the first 6 or so hours of Engage, although you're honestly not missing much. Engage takes place on the continent of Elios, a world split up into 5 realms. You play as Alir, the divine dragon, basically anime dragon Jesus, who has been awakened after 1,000-year slumber in order to fend off Sombron, the fell dragon. In order to do this, you have to recruit the assistance of the leaders of the 5 realms and their armies, as well as utilize the power of the Emblem Rings. So far, the plot has not gotten any deeper than that. I understand that this is only the beginning of the game, so to expect it to go places so quickly is somewhat unreasonable, but I did expect some sort of hook to get me, engaged with the story. Ha! This game lacks that. The closest thing that this game has to a hook is the death of Lumera, your mother. This is clearly meant to be the catalyst for Alir to set off on her quest and save Elios, considering how much time they spend on it in the cutscene. The problem with that is that we barely spend any time with Lumera before she's killed off, and in that time, nothing happens besides her breasting boobily in cutscenes and a mock battle where we learn the basics of gameplay. Besides that, we're just supposed to like Lumera despite barely getting to know her because she's our mom. It just didn't click with me. What doesn't help are the characters and their writing. Good lord, what even are these characters? It almost feels like traveling with planks of wood with faces drawn on them would be more interesting at times. The characters all have their one defining character trait, and that's about it outside of supports. Alir is kind. Vander wants to protect Alir. Clan is timid. Alfred, I'm not even really sure what his character is supposed to be honest. I know he wants to protect the people of Firene, but that's about it, and the list goes on. Even the support conversations so far haven't been very interesting, mostly due to the fact that the characters are so uninteresting. It's odd because I like the characters insofar as I think they're entertaining sometimes and have pleasant personalities, but I'm not invested in their stories at all. So far, the only character I found legitimately interesting is Yunaka. While she does have some appealing qualities, I also find the hints at her backstory interesting, and I actually want to know more about her.
You must have great eyesight, Yunaka.
Yeah, I have the killer's eyes.
What was that?
Killer eyes! I've got killer eyes! You know, they're great at seeing stuff.
Also, Haya Papaya is blessed, and I will accept no other opinions on this matter. I wouldn't say that the characters and story are terrible, or even outright bad. It's just, like I said, they're generic and boring. There's nothing here that gets me excited to keep playing the game, or a character that I absolutely love who makes me want to continue just to see where their story goes. All that's really keeping me going is just how fun the gameplay is. The writing in this game is so disappointing because the previous game in the series was so incredible in this regard. From the very beginning, Three Houses had an engaging and interesting story that kept me hooked from beginning to end, even on replays to do the different routes. That was a game that had engaging characters, a story that wasn't just black and white good guys versus bad guys, and a theme that it stuck to throughout its entire runtime. While not every character was a win, looking at you, Linhart, I can pretty safely say that in a few years, I'll remember more characters and plot points from Three Houses than I ever will from Engage. Fire Emblem Engage is certainly a game that I am playing. Nothing more and nothing less. I'm enjoying it, but once I'm done, I don't think I'll remember it very much after the fact. While the gameplay is pretty fantastic, the story, characters, and writing are a total letdown. I'm debating if I even want to do a full review on the game at this point, because there's not a lot to talk about. We'll see what happens, I suppose. Thank you all for watching. If you liked this video, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. My name is NightParadox. Have a good night, and stay wicked.